when I was 18 years old, I went to Mexico on spring break. It was like my second vacation ever in my life. And we took a red eye there. And when we got there, there was nothing, we were there too early to check into our hotel. So we did what 18-year-olds do in that situation. We got fucking piss drunk all day long before we checked into our hotel. And as we were on the beach drinking, we looked over and saw a bridge. And there were just people jumping off the bridge, bungee jumping off the fucking bridge. So we were like, let's do that. And I got up there and I had a bungee cord around my ankles because that's where they tied it. And I sobered up the second I looked down because the bungee was all frayed. And I was like, oh shit, I'm going to die here. And this little Mexican dude working the bungee goes, Vamonos. And this little Dora the Explorer motherfucker shoves me off the bridge, which you're supposed to dive head first off of because I went feet first. And when it met its point of resistance, it just snapped my whole fucking body. Right? And everyone thought I was dead. Everyone watching me was like, oh, that guy, we just watched a man die. And I get off and my ankles are bleeding. And there was a giant applause because they all were like, oh, he survived. There was a giant applause as I got off. And that applause was the first of 2 ways that I got clap in Mexico. Today on the show is the big boss man here at A Shared Universe Podcastudio, the man, the Ming, the legend. Ming Chen is here with Ken and myself. We're talking crazy travel stories. And this, like a chlamydial urethra burn, is a bit too much. Did you know that we did this once before, Ming and I?
Yeah, I fucked it up.
We had one of those big those like old school looking mics, the Shure mics that look like the old broadcaster mics.
I love those so much.
Yeah, I do too. They're just cool looking. Except, have you ever done stand up with one of those? Like I did one. There's a place in Soho, Haran Comedy Club. It's like below a theater, and they have those. It's like very awkward to hold. It feels goofy holding it.
You're not supposed to hold them.
No, I know, but it was like you can't. The little connector at the bottom of it is like this.
Yeah.
So you either got to hold it like this or you got to do this, which makes you feel ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anyway, we did it, and I had that in front of me, but because the camera's there, it pulled the focus onto the mic, so I was like blurry in the background.
Well, I fucked it up because I was like, oh, I can run this by myself.
Yeah. No one was watching.
I know what I'm doing, right? Right? He's like, I've done this before.
Ethan wasn't here.
He wasn't here. I was like, I got this, but I didn't. There's no one here to check the focus, so he was blurry, and I'm like. I was like, I felt bad. And I was like, can we just reshoot it where you just ask the questions again? And he's like, let's just do this over. I'm like, okay.
I'm picturing it like if...
if Ming wanted me to come and like redo my lines for an hour and a half. I'm like, I'm like, I did a lot of talking. I don't know. And I'm a horrible actor. So those two factors come.
Yeah, you'd be like, oh my God, you did what? Like, it would have been totally unnatural. But
I would have totally fucked that up. I would have been like, wait, what happened next? I would have overacted.
Yeah, the moral of the story is even though I have a studio, but if I'm here, I want someone else running everything else. Yeah. So that's why you should hire A Shared Universe for all your podcast and interview needs. So yes,
wow, what an ad.
That's the moral of the story. Because even when you run the story, you could fuck it up. Severely. But listen, you know what? It all worked out because now we have you here.
Yeah, now we have Ken here.
Which makes me so happy. Like beyond happy.
I'm happy to be back.
We love you. You're a freaking rock star here in the studio. Yeah, people love you, man.
Oh, that's nice. I love being back.
Ming said he's one of the few guys I know that's actually funny. That's how he sold you to me.
No, for real.
I said to Ming, like I'd love to have some people through your network on the show as guests, and he was like, Ken, and I was like, oh yeah, Ken's funny. Like I knew you were, and I was like, Ken's funny, and then he was like, he's one of the few guys I know that are actually funny. So he's just shitting on everyone else while complimenting you, which was nice.
Well, that's my favorite kind of compliment.
one that hurts others.
Yeah, I mean, because everyone knows, like, oh yeah, my friend does stand-up comedy, and then you go and you're like, oh my God, like that's.
Oh God, why did I come here?
Right, it's terrible. Right. So it's terrible. So very rarely do you have that friend like, oh yeah, I do comedy, and they're actually funny. And
one time I had one of my mom's friends, one of my mom's neighbors said. She heard I was a comedian and she wanted to come see a show.
Oh God.
And my mom instantly said, he's not ha-ha funny. But he does.
Funny, but not,
he makes you pensive.
Not funny, ha-ha.
He does say some things that will make you think. And first off, I was.
That's what every comic was the other day.
Yeah, I was
they're
like,
insightful.
yeah, that's. I just want an entire room of people to be like,
That's pretty good.
But I also appreciate.
You wanted an audience going, good point.
I appreciated it so much, like her diverting her friends away from one of my shows.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. That's a fantastic point. You know,
don't love how you delivered the message, but the message was on point.
Was this early on for you doing it?
No, this was a couple years ago. Like I'd already done some cool shit, you know.
It's yesterday.
Right, like you have a career.
That's awesome.
Well, you don't want to appeal to your mom's sense of humor. Like that isn't. No comic is going for that.
No.
Like I don't expect my mom. I don't want my if my mom is like your comedy is like my brand. I'm like, oh, I'm doing it wrong. I mean, my mom doesn't have she's not funny like that. She's anything I say that would get laughs wouldn't make her laugh. They'd horrify her.
Yeah, automatic quit right there. I'm automatic retirement.
Did your mom ever come see you do stand up?
Yeah, she's come see me a few times.
My mother came to one show.
And what happened with both of you?
What happened with yours? Was she like, oh, that was wonderful? Give you a kiss on the forehead?
Yeah, you know,
my boy. Actually, I had to be more like if you were Italian.
She always tells me, you know, it's funny now that I'm thinking of it, I can't ever I don't remember like a specific, I love that joke so much or
I love you. She never said any of those words, but she
would always, it's always like, well, I look around the audience and I get so nervous for you.
Yeah. Right, because that's a good point. Like you're a mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I guess like even as a dad, if my daughter did stand up, which I will divert her away from that as much as I can, but I probably would, even knowing how it goes, I'd probably be nervous for her. Like just because you're a parent, you can't turn off parent mode. My mom came to see me once many years ago. I want to say it was Stand Up New York. And I just was, it was weird for me because I was, especially early on, I was really filthy. And I just was like, I don't want to say this in front of my mom. I couldn't get her out of my head while she was like, I knew exactly where she was sitting. And I just avoided the whole side of the room. I didn't even look to the right because I was like, I don't want to see my mom. As I'm like talking about like a graphic blowjob or something, you know what I mean? Like I'm like, I don't even want to, I'm going to pretend she's not there. And then afterward, I'll never forget this. She was like, that was nice. I was like, oh no.
Yeah, it's never good. You have to hold back, right?
I didn't. I just tried to, because I knew that. I was like, if I'm editing myself, it's not going to be great.
Yeah.
So I just didn't look to the right.
Yeah. Did your mom at least give you the fake laugh?
I don't know. I didn't look at her.
Because if
I would not even look in her direction.
Really, because if no one's laughing, at least maybe I should throw in, right? I'm like,
you got one person, yeah.
It's like,
that's a sad moment. I think if the whole audience didn't laugh and my mom, her solo laugh echoed, I would have quit comedy that day. That would have been the most depressing thing ever.
Yeah. I would rather get heckled than get like fake encouragement.
Oh yeah.
You know, like I remember I did a show once at West Side Comedy Club, and I was like, there was one woman up front. I was doing well, but she would not shut up. She wanted to be part of the show.
Oh, with you.
She would not stop interrupting, and it was getting infuriating. But then a lady at the table next to her saw that I was getting irritated, so she kept trying to encourage me, and she would look at me and be like, continue,
do great.
And I wanted to drop kick that lady. Like the heckler wasn't even
right
in my mind.
Well, the heckler's
anymore.
part of the life. Like you have to deal with that sometimes, unfortunately.
Yeah. But like looking over at this, like, you go get him.
You're the man. You're the man.
So much anger.
I had the same person do both to me once. I talked on the show about this when I had Joe Pontillo on. We were talking about like bad bombs, and early on I had this woman heckle me like it's like my third show ever, and I'm like fucking shitting myself because I said something that pissed her off. She's screaming at me. I don't know how to do crowd work at all, and she's very aggressive, and I don't know what to do. And then that all happened within the first minute of me being up there. I had like 7 more minutes left, and it was like the longest 7 minutes of my life, right? And I'm just fucking eating shit. I'm getting because now the whole crowd's nervous. I could see their fear because there was like a real altercation. Like she was really yelling at me, and I couldn't turn any of it into a joke. I was trying, but it wasn't working, and it was really awkward. So then I was like just trying to like tell my jokes, and I was like forgetting them. I was freaking out. You know, it was just like a horrible experience, right? And then as she sees me flustered, she's like, "Oh no, you're doing great."
Oh, man.
The same person.
Yeah.
It's like she was both of those people you just said. She's like, "No, you're doing." I'm like, "Fuck you, lady."
Yeah.
But I didn't want to go back there, so I was like, "Thanks."
Double whammy.
Oh man, so awkward. Ming, you're doing some stand up lately, right? You've done some.
Listen, inspired by both of you, mostly you, Ken. I've never seen your act. I've never seen your stand up, so
Yeah, it just felt like an unnecessary thing to say.
Right.
Like, just,
I've done 2 open mics.
Yeah.
And it was fun. So I did them in the most remote places possible, just because if I sucked, then no one would ever know.
right?
So
Didn't? Yeah. Where were they?
the first one I did was in a hidden bar underneath a liquor store in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Oh, that sounds so
Oh,
cool.
no.
Yeah.
Very Breaking Bad of you.
Yeah, it was cool. My friend was hosting it, and I kind of halfway promised, like, hey, next time I'm here, I'll jump up. I can do 5 minutes, and then I went. I was like, oh crap, I have to fulfill that promise. So spent all day.
Sounds great.
Wrote some jokes I thought were pretty solid, and I jumped up there. And I remember my friend was like, 5 minutes, man, it's gonna feel like forever. So I got really nervous because like, oh man, maybe he's right. Like, what if it feels like forever up there?
Yeah.
And it was quite the contrary. It flew by. Like,
It
Well,
depends
you
how you do.
probably did all right then.
Yeah, it depends how you do. If you're doing great, it feels like that's enough time. If you are eating shit, then it feels like 6 hours. Right?
Yeah, like
So that's good. If it flew by, that's a good.
And you were
sign.
having fun too.
I was having fun.
Yeah.
All my friends were in the audience, so that was cool. It wasn't great. It's my first one, so
Yeah,
but I didn't
sure.
think it was terrible by any means, and I didn't think I was like maybe like 10th in. So all the people before me were awful. So I was like, all right, at least I did better than those guys.
Really,
And,
there wasn't prime talent at the
At the hidden
Albuquerque
liquor
underground.
store.
I'm surprised to hear this.
at Founders Monday night open mic in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Not quite.
That's like going to a strip club in some small town in Ohio. It's
Yeah.
like you're not getting great talent.
Or just going to a regular strip club during the daytime, like
Any strip club anywhere.
The lunchtime shift is
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the stripper open mic.
Yeah, like fucking scars.
Yeah,
and everything.
and my friend videoed it, and I wasn't gonna post it, but I ran into Jim Norton. I did his podcast shortly after.
Yeah.
He was like, "Oh man, you did your first stand up? Did you record it?" I'm like, "Yeah," and he was like, "Oh man, I would kill to have a copy of my first ever
man.
stand up."
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
I'm sure back then they didn't have cell phone cameras. And he's like, you should post it. Just post it. Just put it up on YouTube.
Yeah.
So it's up there if you guys want to watch it.
I do.
Oh,
Yeah.
I absolutely
Yes.
want to
Yeah,
watch it on the show now.
I felt my biggest problem was, I'm used to podcasting, so it's a longer format. So my jokes were way too drawn out. I was like,
Yeah.
all right, gotta get to the point.
Yeah, it's
Gotta get to
hard.
the
That's a
point.
hard thing. Like I remember starting out and writing jokes. It was in college, and it was like I hadn't even been to a lot of comedy clubs. My experience with comedy was TV.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? So I was writing stories, and I remember I had this guy was nice enough to meet with me that was booking me on a show. He was a comic, and he was like, let me see your jokes, because I was like nervous about it, and he was like, let me see your jokes, and he's like, what the fuck? He's like, I'm giving you 7 minutes. He's like, what is this? He's like, this joke is 8 minutes.
Yeah.
There's one joke that he sat down and he with a pen just goes,
Nope.
Here it is. But he kept the funny parts of the joke intact. It was like 9/10 of what I wrote. It was cut out, and he's like, there's your punchline. There's your setup. There's your punchline. And I was like, oh. The joke is in there somewhere,
Yeah.
but I was doing some fucking, like, I thought I was like Carlin, I thought I was going to go on this long rant, and she's like, get the joke done, you fucking asshole.
Yeah, nobody's looking for an open micer to get up there and pontificate.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I wouldn't have had time for 3 jokes. That's how long the jokes were. But
Yeah.
then where was the second place you did stand up?
Second place, Anchorage, Alaska.
Wow, you really fucking find the great comedy havens.
Yeah. I was at
Jesus
this
Christ.
dive bar. I was drinking, and
Because you were traveling for other stuff, or?
I was there for a Comic-Con.
Got it.
And I stayed next to it. I was at this dive bar. I saw all these people gathering. And I'm like, what's going on tonight? They're like, oh, open mic comedy. I'm like, oh, really? It's like, well, all right. I wonder if I could get enough jokes together for 5 minutes. And so I was at the bar just writing them. I was like, I think I got about 5 minutes here. The
You
problem
wrote them at the bar and then put them up there, and it was your second set ever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and this one was it was a unique setup. The bar in Anchorage, there was no cutoff time, So some of these guys are going 10, 14 minutes, and they're horrible. I'm like, oh, all right, this is...
Oh, there was no cutoff time?
No cutoff time, yeah. I was waiting for the person with the light or... Yeah,
I've been at mics where they'll turn your mic off.
Yeah.
You get 5 minutes. If you're still talking at 6 or 7, they shut you down.
Yeah,
the host will walk up and take the microphone from you in New York.
Yeah, so angry if you want to do the Carmelo Bongiovi comedy hour, you probably could. Like there's no one kicking you off.
Go film a special at this dive bar in Anchorage that nobody knows is going to be a special.
Totally could. So I went up there and I did 5 minutes and way better. I thought it went way better. I got some pretty good.
Maybe you didn't overthink it because you wrote it right before.
Yeah, and I knew to keep them concise. So I'm sure even now you guys learn something new every time you go up there. So will I continue? If I'm in like Dubai, maybe I'll do one there. Or like
you're only looking to do stand-up in places where you shouldn't.
Fiji, maybe I'll do in Fiji. But Asbury Park, New Jersey, or Red Bank, we'll see.
Yeah.
Oh, because you don't like you want to do it and then never be able to bump into somebody that saw you. Like
Well, that was my thought. Was like, hey, I'll do it here. Like nobody knows me here. I was like, asshole, you're on TV, dumbass. Like
yeah. They might not know you from that.
Yeah,
right. But,
it's even worse because if I bomb, they're like, oh man, that TV show is bullshit, man.
And you know what? Like people, and this is fucked up to say, but it's true. Like people want to see the guy from TV.
Yeah.
Like they don't want to say, I saw the guy from Comic Book Man and he was so funny I couldn't. Like they want to tell their friends.
Like this asshole's doing stand up.
Yeah, I saw him eat shit and it was great.
Does the audience think that or do comics think that?
No, I think.
So I think comics definitely think that about like non-comedians doing comedy. You know what I mean?
I don't get. Like when comics get so annoyed.
Yeah.
Right. Like when people come up to them, like I should be up there doing comedy. Like what? Yeah. And then comics get so like pretentious about that. Right.
Oh yeah.
Where they're like, hey, I've been doing this for however many years. And you think it's like we all started as somebody who went to a comedy club, looked at it, was like, maybe I can do that.
Right.
And we went to open mic. Like everybody started looking at
as
someone.
The person saying,
yes,
I should do that.
Yeah.
My thought about that, I agree with you 100%. My thought about that is, so do it. So then do it and see if you've got it. Right? Because you don't really know if you're for yourself, even if you're very confident. Which maybe is a little bit of a sign you should be. Most comics are pretty self-doubting, I guess. But there's also an extreme of confidence and like self-deprecation, right? But like you don't really know unless you do it. So yeah, just fucking do it. Just go do it. If you're, I think comics get annoyed because in that moment it feels like that person's like, that was easy. It's like downplaying.
But it kind of is easy,
but it's easier if you're funny.
But even if you're not, you're just up there talking.
We've talked about this. Like comedy is like it's a career, but it's not a job. We've talked about this. It's like in the grand scheme of things, like even when you're doing it professionally and you did a half hour tonight. I worked for a half hour tonight.
Yeah, it really is not. It's not hard work. It's not backbreaking work. I've done like firehouse shows where the firemen are like, "I could never do what you did," and I'm like, "You run in the burning buildings. Yeah. What are you talking about?"
It'd be worse if I did what you did. Yeah, then everyone would die.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they would be like, "Oh, Ken killed again tonight. 47 dead in a house fire because he can't run upstairs."
Yeah, but man, is he funny.
He killed the whole family of 3 cats.
Did he kill last night at Rascals Comedy Club? He was awesome.
Ironically, there was a fire there, and he made them laugh.
Great White was, and
then they all died.
R.I.P. Jack Russell.
Yes. Who knows? Maybe I'll do one around here. That'll be the next step.
But you're always fucking traveling. That's the other thing. You're literally, I mean, it's like that thing where you text Ming and you're like, oh, like you text him one day and he doesn't get back to you, and then you look on your Instagram, you're like, oh, he didn't answer me because he's in Fiji or or he's in Hawaii today, or he's like, you literally are nonstop. Yeah, fucking traveling, dude.
Yeah, it's great. I love it.
Yeah, it's Comic Cons mainly that you're doing. Right?
It's all Comic Cons.
It's all Comic Cons.
It's pretty much all Comic Cons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is great. It's like you guys. I get you get booked, you go. You show up, you shake your ass for a weekend, and then you leave, and then hopefully you get to go out the next weekend. So
Yeah.
And I, you guys know me. I don't say no to anything. So
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right. I know
so-
you're doing this.
We can,
Yeah.
we can tell.
yeah, so,
Yeah, you shouldn't say no to some things, man.
yeah. So yeah, big con, small con, hotel ballroom,
Yeah.
entire, mile-long convention center. So it doesn't
Right,
matter.
because they scale in terms of
Oh yeah,
production, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
I mean, you got like New York, San Diego. Is San Diego the original?
Not the original.
It's like
original,
the one
but
that made it big.
It's the
Yeah.
it's the most well known for sure, and arguably the biggest.
I've never been to a Comic-Con, but I have been to an adult film one. I actually worked when I was in college. I worked I don't know, a porn con.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's called, but like a company I was interning for, through one. And it was like what I imagine a Comic-Con would look like with all the booths,
Yes.
but it was adult film stars.
It's very similar. You got
Yeah.
vendors and you got special guests.
Right.
Then you have panels, and then they usually have an area where you can take professional photos with,
Yeah.
depending on the convention, with either a movie star or, in your case, a porn star.
Yeah,
So,
right. Well, this was a long time ago, so it was like Tara Patrick.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
like I think Ron Jeremy was there and still actively working.
These are all names that I shockingly know. Yes.
Those are the only two.
Yeah.
Those are the only two I remember from
Yeah.
that time. But I remember it was like they made the mistake of making it open to the public and having very cheap tickets. This is before they had those big adult, now they have big ones,
Yeah.
big shows and the award shows and everything
Yeah.
like that. This was a company that threw conferences for different kinds of company who had the idea to throw an adult one, and they did it right outside of Penn Station. And I remember the tickets were so cheap that you just got people really fucking weird sleazy guys
Yeah.
walking in. They're like, oh, I just paid $15. It was something really cheap like that,
Yeah.
$20 or something. It's everyone could afford to go in. So you had little nerdy dudes in there so excited to see porn stars, and then you had these really weird. I remember this one guy just had sores all over his face. He was like, "Can I get in?" And I was like, "Unfortunately, you can." Yeah. And he was in there, and he was just hitting on all the porn stars. It was really it was gross.
Yeah.
It felt really sleazy.
It's not dissimilar to the porn con, the Comic Cons.
To the Comic Con, yeah, but because you're basically at this point, I mean, there's just cons at some point, at somewhere in the world, there's a con going on every week.
Yeah, if not 5 to 10. Yeah,
Really?
Yeah, around the world for sure.
That's crazy.
Every
man.
weekend. Yeah, January to December. It's great.
Right. And it's all, is it all, this is, I don't know anything about it. Is it all one organization that's throwing these?
No,
or is
no,
it,
it's,
no, these are just different.
It could literally
Okay.
be one guy who owns a comic book shop. I'm going to throw a Comic Con.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he'll
Oh,
go
Comic Con isn't a thing that's trademarked and there's a Comic Con?
Well, there's the one, right?
There's
the,
San Diego Comic Con. They've trademarked the term Comic Con.
Got it. So the other ones are just other conferences being thrown.
Yeah. Now other smaller ones call themselves Comic Con, and San Diego either chooses
Yeah.
to sue them or not.
Yeah.
But they actually own the term Comic Con.
Right. But you're just, that just puts you on the road constantly. And you have a family at home, right? You have
I do.
kids and
Yeah. 2 kids, wife, dog, cat.
yeah. Are they where are you? Or are they just
I mean, at first, yeah, but my kids are older now, so
Yeah.
they barely notice I'm gone, and then
Right.
you know,
you bought me this car, so get out there and shake that ass, daddy.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you guys are married. It actually
Yeah.
works if you're not home all the time. It actually works out.
Yeah,
better.
true. Yeah. Because when I think of travel, especially for work, I'm always everything I do is focused around food. I mean, literally.
Oh, yeah.
I'm on the way here, and I'm what am I going to eat
Yeah.
on the way? I'm thinking, what am I going to eat when I get it? I mean, it's my whole. It's a serious addiction for me. I literally am just constantly eating and planning food. If you're let's go to a restaurant on Friday, and it's Monday. I'm looking at that menu at least 6 times.
Oh yeah,
before
I got
Friday.
a list. Yeah.
I'm sick. I'm like a perv for food. I'm the equivalent to a sexual predator for food. You know what I mean? I will look at that menu. I'm ooh yeah. Then I get there and I'm real gross about it. I get,
they throw
too
a
much
porn
food.
con for food. I would be there for sure. Absolutely.
Because I just think about how much you travel. I'm I think I'd go into cardiac arrest if I travel like you because I would eat too poorly. You know what I mean? Because I would just constantly be eating at restaurants.
That is a problem. Yes. And,
it is hard on the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where you're nothing's consistent. So yeah, you don't eat till midnight or whatever sometimes, or you don't eat all day sometimes.
Yeah.
But the reason I go to so many is so I can eat at different cities.
Yeah.
For sure.
Your social media, every time I open up Facebook, there's
different
just
place.
a picture of Ming in a different country or
sometimes he's
exotic
shirtless.
locale with like a cheesesteak or a pizza that you can only get in Fiji.
Right.
And
Right.
it looks amazing.
Yeah.
Like I'm fascinated with your life. It seems like the most fun, but then like I put myself like, oh, can I do what he does? And all that travel and the airplanes.
Yeah.
I don't like that. To me sounds
exhausting.
Fucking miserable.
Yeah.
I hate flying. I'm like, I don't think I've ever had 2 minutes in my life on an airplane where I'm like, this is all right. I feel relaxed.
You're like constantly conscious of the fact that you're hurling through the air.
Yeah, I'm like, this shouldn't be happening. This
Right.
is insane.
This isn't the way this is supposed to
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't overthink it. 'Cause sometimes I sleepwalk through it. But yeah, theoretically, if you think about it, yeah, you're in a tin can going 600 miles an hour, 30,000 feet up with like 200 other people in an enclosed space. Yeah, that's not fun. That's not fun for anybody.
It's not fun to think about, right?
Yeah.
You just sleep on the planes?
Yeah, that's where I get my sleep now. I just lay back and try to fall asleep.
Yeah.
And hopefully when I wake up, we've landed. Like that's the best case scenario.
Dude, when I travel, I'm such a fucking fat ass that like I will do a good amount of research. Like I could be there for work. I'm not preparing for work. I'm literally just thinking about the restaurants. I'm like, when I land, this is near the airport.
Yeah.
All right, this is an In-N-Out near the airport.
Yeah.
Got it. Got the In-N-Out.
Supposed Boulevard, LAX. Yes.
You know that, right? Then there you go.
Yeah.
Right, and then you're like, all right. Then I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get to the hotel. I got to check in. Where am I going to dinner that night?
Yeah.
Before I got to do a thing.
Yeah, I spend the whole week writing down lists and looking at the restaurants.
Yeah.
Because the con's a con. It's a concrete building.
Right.
I'm sitting in there for 8 hours, but when I leave, then that's the real con right there.
Yeah.
And it's cool. But at this point, I go to so many that you run into the same people. Either their support
like
staff,
that are attending the con.
their agents, or sometimes they're other TV or movie stars that you've gotten to know. Some are foodies as well.
Yeah.
So I guess I've gotten to be the guy where kind of everyone turns to me. It's like, well, where are we eating tonight? What's good?
You're like the food guy.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
where what time are we meeting up? It's like, all right, well, and I already have the list already. So
Yeah.
And I'm only there for a weekend. Typically Friday morning to like Monday.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got on a good weekend 3 nights to explore the whole town. So I try to hit as many places as possible.
I think about certain meals in my travels. Like I think about like ones from my past. Again, sort of sexually. Like I think of them like that one girl you hooked up with, you can't say, years later you masturbate to. That's how I think about my meals.
Right.
I'm like literally like I think about like oxtail I ate in Spain.
Yeah.
Like maybe once every 3 weeks. I was like 6 years ago. I think about it once every 3 weeks. Or like the cured meats. I'm such a fucking disgusting fat ass.
Yeah.
Like I'm just constantly thinking about food. Every once in a while I'll bring it up to like if it's a place I went to with my wife. I'm like, oh, do you remember that like interesting like calamari like sandwich we got in Spain in the middle of the night? We're like walking around in Madrid. Like I'm talking about it so romantically, and she doesn't think like me. You know what I mean? She's like, yeah, I remember. Like, why are you thinking it's midnight? Why are you talking about this?
Yeah. But you got to eat, right? You got to eat and you got to fuck. So it totally makes sense that they go hand in hand.
Yeah. Well, they don't go hand in hand. I'm not fucking. I'm just having food moments that feel like fucking.
Right. But you're
my sexual gratification is coming from the food.
If you sexualize the food, like I get it. I totally get it, man.
It's so funny. Like I thought that I really liked food until I'm listening to you guys. And I'm like, oh, I don't do any of this.
Yeah. Gross.
No, actually, I'm like, this is smart because when I do go on the road, like I'll get to a new town and I don't know I don't know where to go. To me, it's an adventure. Like, well, I'll just go there, smoke a joint, and then
you're like a
figure
winged
out
traveler. Like you get there and you're like, what's around?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then, but to me, it's kind of like.
That's fun.
Oh, I'm going in blind. Yeah, but it also backfires a lot, you know.
You end up in a shitty.
There's a great club in Hanover, Pennsylvania, Church of Satire. Absolutely love this club. Yeah. But Hanover, Pennsylvania, the entire town shuts down at I don't know, 8 p.m.
Right.
There is no good restaurant to be had anywhere. Yeah, and it's breakfast is a problem, lunch is a problem.
That's like the case of Pennsylvania in general.
Yeah.
I feel like you, even in like, maybe not like Philly, like not those really big, like Pittsburgh or something like that, but like most of, right? That's like kind of the case in a lot of parts of like states like that. You're like, you get there and you're like, I really should have done some research here because there is nothing to eat. And you end up in some like gross tavern. Eat some like bad food, you're like, oh,
or
God.
just some like shitty chain, like Denny's is the only thing in this town that stays open.
Yeah.
And I went, and it's like we said, like a lot of times you won't eat before a show. You have nervous energy, or you're just your head somewhere else. And last time we were there, my wife and I ended up at Denny's. We were like, no matter what, we're not ending up at Denny's. And then fast forward 8 hours later, we're at Denny's. She orders coffee and an English muffin. She was like, I'm getting the only thing they can't possibly fuck up.
Yeah.
It comes out, the coffee is ice cold. The English muffin isn't toasted.
A not toasted English muffin.
There's nobody on the planet has ever ordered an untoasted English muffin.
Yeah.
They just cut open an English muffin.
Maybe a serial killer.
Right.
Just fucking take it right out of
prison food, man. Yeah. That's prison food.
That is prison food, yeah. Or like a child. Like I call some of my daughter's meals prison food, like prison
Isn't
meals.
It insane?
She's like, I want non-toasted bread and an apple. I'm like, what the fuck? That's like toddler behavior.
Right.
My daughter will eat dry pancakes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, my daughter too. She'll
like
eat
no
dry
syrup.
Yeah,
no, I'm like, it's just. It's
and
like
then you feel
paste.
bad saying it because you're like, oh, I shouldn't convince her to have more sugar, right? You're like, I'm not gonna be like put syrup on that, but. Ew.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's you only eat like that if you're a child or a crazy person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But that that's like my whole experience of traveling. Like I go to a place and when I was younger, it was more about the partying, of course.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but now if I go to a place, I'm just thinking about the food. And by the way, I'm just fucking gross at home. I just cook. I love to cook.
Right.
So I get really into I will spend as much time as I should spend on writing, I spend on food. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's where my time goes. I like when I was younger, I hated to go to like a supermarket when I was younger. Now I'm like, I love to go to a store, like especially good, like a butcher or something, and get the food. And like really pick out my ingredients. Like I get I spend a lot of time and emotional effort, into food. Like I will, and my wife will just see me like pouring so much time into like cooking a dish. Now, granted, it's for her too.
Sure.
But she's like, can you just make like the quick version of that?
Yeah, it's like I'm hungry.
No, we haven't emulsified the garlic.
Yeah. Yeah. Hello.
What are you, an animal?
Yeah.
I'm not going to just cook this.
Yeah. I've tried caramelized onions here. Like, hello, can you?
Yeah, it takes a while.
Leave me alone.
It takes a while. I got to bring out the sugars.
Right. Yes.
Ming, let me ask you this because you touched on this before. You said you don't say no to anything.
Very rarely.
Which also, as comedians, we know can backfire.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what was the thing? Like, does anything stand out where you were like, you looked around and you were like, oh, I should have said
how to get to this town? Like,
why maybe I didn't.
I think Ming's so nice.
I have a few, but I think the biggest one that comes to mind was back in 2008. Kevin was filming a movie called Zach and Mary Make a Porno, and he's shooting it in Pittsburgh. And right before he went to go shoot it, he texted me. He was like, hey, I'm going up to Pittsburgh for a couple months. Is there any chance you could come out to LA and house sit for me? And on the outset, that sounds awesome.
It sounds
that sounds great.
Yeah, I would do that right
like
now.
House sitting for Kevin Smith
goes.
and he lives in a pretty awesome house that he actually bought from Ben Affleck back in 2002, and I'd been there a couple of times before. But I was like, hey man, 2 months in LA
from a Ben Affleck divorce.
He's probably back there now on Kevin's couch.
He had actually moved out of there. Interestingly enough, he'd moved out of there for Ben and Jen version 1 because they had gotten together, and he moved out of there to get a better place, and he sold it to Kevin. And Kevin was like, "Will you house sit?" I was like, "Yeah, 2 months in LA. I'll come out." And it was one of the most awful experiences of my life. Just you're in a big house, you can't touch anything. It was awful.
Oh, really? Like a museum?
I mean, he's got some pretty cool priceless work, just collectibles and artwork and stuff.
Yeah. So you just felt like you just had to stand in the middle of the floor.
Yeah, pretty much.
You felt you were living there. Yeah.
I was in the guest bedroom, and it was just and you know, you don't want to mess anything up either. You know, I lived in there like.
By the way, if this is your most terrible travel
I
experience,
know it sounds.
are you kidding me right now?
He's like,
I know, I was just like in this mansion with like so many like priceless things and like, oh.
Yeah, but you know, if you're in your friend's place, you know, if you spill something, no
I know
big
you
deal.
mean. I know you
But,
mean. It's
you know,
not.
it's like,
you're there for a long period of time. It's not comfortable. I know you mean.
It's like what what happened? You know, you burned Kevin Smith. His house caught on fire. It's like, yeah, I fucked it up. I burned down his house. Like it was constantly just looking. It's like I don't know what to do here. Like
yeah.
You're like extra. You're like tiptoeing around everything.
Yeah. Anyway, Kevin, if you need someone to house it. I will house it for
I
you.
don't recommend it.
I won't touch a fucking thing. I'll sleep on your floor.
Yeah.
Is there anything worse than like staying over someone's house? I
don't like sleeping over people's houses. I never did.
No, I can't stand it. Yeah. I don't like Airbnbs.
Oh, I do like Airbnb.
No, not bed and breakfasts.
Oh man,
bed and breakfasts.
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
when there's other people there though. Like I don't like being at like sleeping at my friend's house or like a bed and breakfast. Oh, terrible.
A bed and breakfast. It's like
the creepy old couples like, hey, you
and
want
then
some eggs? I'm like, no, you're gonna kill me. No, I don't want to. Yeah, bed and breakfasts are awful. I mean, in my opinion, it's a terrible way to stay. It's like I get it. It's like charming. I get it, but no.
It's not that charming. Then you're walking down the hall to the
people
bathroom
like that shit,
and
though.
you're bumping into the people.
It's like,
that own the
hey,
house.
what's up?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's uncomfortable. You're like in your pajamas. You've got like morning wood. See like some 86-year-old lady. She's like, how do you take your eggs? And you're like, oh, this is terrible.
Yeah.
That was not where I was expecting you to take that conversation.
Yeah, you're holding back, Ming.
Yeah, wait. The Kevin Smith. Yeah.
No, because you were like, I did an open mic on a Monday night in the basement of
Right.
an Albuquerque liquor
that was
store.
by choice.
And,
that was by choice.
But
No one
that
asked me to
sounds
do
terrible.
that. No one asked me to do that. No, I
Or
don't.
just Anchorage as a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
Anchorage is awesome. Anchorage is
Alaska
really
is
awesome.
cool.
Is Anchorage cool?
Yeah. Well,
Oh, it is for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Cool.
Highly recommend it.
Cooler than your friend's mansion? I don't know. That doesn't sound like a terrible. I know what you mean though. I do know what you mean. It's like not comfortable. I don't like sleeping at like if people are like you're out late or whatever with friends and they're like, oh, just sleep over. I'm like, nope. I don't want to sleep in your like guest room.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Come stay at my place. Yeah.
It's like I'm like
I'll get a hotel. It'll be so much better that way.
Yeah, I will just be able to like spread out. I can like settle in. Go to like a friend's house. I like Airbnbs though. Airbnbs are nice because you can.
Yeah, Airbnbs are good.
You know what nice about Airbnbs? You get to pretend you're someone else.
Yeah.
It's like you're in this like house, this like cool house. Like my wife is amazing at finding like really cool Airbnbs when we go places, and you're just like in this like cool house with like cool decor that's like something you would never buy. They've got like cookware that's pretty cool. You know, again, food for me.
I remember I stayed at an Airbnb in the Hamptons. I was doing a show.
Okay.
I was doing a show at a theater there.
Both of you right now. I hate both of you.
But it was like a room. It was like an attic room, not an attic, like over a lady's garage.
Oh.
But you had your own entrance, your own bathroom. And so I thought, I was under the impression I was never going to see this lady.
Yeah.
But I got back from my show and I opened the door and she was standing right there and I had not met her ahead of time. There'd been no communication other than like, hey, this is how you get in. All that.
Little jarring.
And she says,
hi, you smell nice.
No, she says, so how was your show?
Oh.
And I was like, what?
Oh.
She was like, you were at the theater, right? She said, oh yeah. She said, I saw your name or I Googled you or I saw there was a show in town and I figured you. And then I just spent the rest of the night waiting to see the door waiting to see if the door starts jiggling.
That's weird.
Yeah. And then she was like talking to me about comedy, and
it's like realistically speaking, I guess like if you were friends with the Airbnb owner and they're like, oh yeah, sometimes I Google the people who stay there, you'd be like, you wouldn't think it's that weird. It's a little weird, but the moment you come back,
yeah,
right,
it almost felt like she was waiting up for me.
She was.
You know what's so funny is like as a comic, like you want to be recognized and stuff, right? But like, or you want to have a good enough career that people know you are. But like when it actually happens, you're like creeped out by it. I had someone in a Verizon store, same thing. They just Googled me, like they were fixing my phone, or I was getting a new phone, and they're like, "Oh, your stand-up's funny." I was like, "Ew, what are you talking about?" I'm like, I'm realistic about who I am in my career. You don't just know me,
right?
You had to go out of your way to find me, you fucking weirdo. Yeah, but well, so I mean, that's that. There's you could stay in some really creepy places. I was in a place in I guess it was very outside of. Are you familiar? Like, have you been to Oregon a lot?
Portland, Eugene. Yeah, I've been there.
It's like Portland is this little cool city, right?
Yes.
Outside of that, it's Oregon.
Yes.
Like you're like, oh, I'm in Oregon. There's just farms and meth, and it just feels like Oregon. You know? And I stayed in this like really. Like motels are like popular again. Like people think they're like trendy,
right? Yes,
cool things. And then you get there and you're like, this is a fucking motel.
Yeah,
this is exactly what I remember motels being like when I would go on a road trip with like my parents, and there were dingy, shitty motels. But my parents would cheap to get a hotel. You know, they're still what they fucking are, but they just put like they have a cool Instagram, and they're like, oh, come stay at this like it's real thrifty and shit. Dude, this fucking thing, it looked like storage containers from the outside. Like and if you went to their Instagram, it does not really look like that. There's really close up shots of like these little picturesque things and like coffee cups and like it's just like all these like pretty Pinteresty things. And you get there and you're like, I got there in the middle of the night. Like by the time I checked in, it was like midnight, and it wasn't even checking. They had like the key was like in a lockbox type of thing. Fucking, there was one dude who had a fucking not sanctioned by the motel, just like a fucking bonfire. Just like by himself in a fucking lawn chair in the gravel parking lot. Yeah. He built himself a fucking fire. Yeah. And he saw me and he had a hat and I went, like just tipped his hat to me and like grunted. I was like, oh, I died tonight. This is just, and I was alone. I was traveling for work. I was alone and I was like, why the fuck did I stay here? Because I got fooled by fucking Instagram into thinking it was a nice place. And it was horrifying. I spent the whole fucking night like a little bitch. I was so goddamn scared. The whole fucking night. It was like one of those things where you like hear house noises and you get scared.
You were right to be scared.
Yeah.
I heard one of the funniest stories. You mentioned meth in Oregon. I can't, for the life of me.
You can't mention Oregon without meth.
I can't remember the comedian. I don't remember who the comic was that told me this story, but we were sitting like at a bar waiting to go on, and he was telling this story about he had a friend who went out to Oregon for a few weeks, like vacation or whatever, to visit somebody, and he ends up getting hooked on meth. He went there, wasn't into meth previously, but
and he got hooked on vacation.
He went out, and so he doesn't come back.
Oh shit.
And so they like his friends are like, and he like cuts off communication. His friends are like, he's in too deep with meth. We have to send somebody to go get him. Shit. So they like figure out who to send, and one of his buddies flies out to Oregon to go collect him, and the guy's like, the friend is like, you have to come back with me. This is crazy. You can't be doing all this meth. And the guy was just like, I love.
You can't be doing all this meth.
Yeah. He's
what
like,
are you doing?
This is arguably too much meth.
Yeah. But the guy was like, I just love meth. He's like, I don't know what to tell you. And the guy, and he like,
what can I say?
He was smoking meth, or I don't know how he was doing it, but they were doing meth.
There's many ways to do it. Yeah.
While I think he said they were smoking, but he was doing meth while they were having the argument. So the friend was like, there's no big deal about meth. Like, he's like, here, I'll show you. And he took the pipe, and the friend takes a hit of the meth to show this guy there's no big deal about meth. But then I guess he took a hit, and then he was like, oh, meth's pretty good. And then this guy ends up with a meth problem.
It's just this fucking, Oregon, I do feel like is sort of a portal to a movie podunk world, like, sort of like a Deliverance-ish world where you could like enter and not come back.
Yeah.
It is a weird place, man, because you got Portland.
Yes.
Right? Which is like a mini Brooklyn in a way, like
pretty hipster,
like
yes.
the hipstery part of Brooklyn
with more mountains and pine trees. But yes,
yeah, but I'm just vibe wise.
Yes,
not aesthetically necessarily,
right,
but
course.
like vibe wise. It's like great restaurants, famous chefs move there now, and like open restaurants, and like there's a huge culinary scene. It's like cool for what that is in that small town, and then then you also have like that beautiful coast.
Yeah,
that's like it's like you feel like you're watching like a Ford commercial,
or like Astoria, like
winding.
the Goonies. They shot the Goonies there. Astoria, that was Oregon. Yeah,
like you've got some really beautiful parts, and then you've got these giant, I guess they're redwood trees that are just like holy fuck. There are parts of Oregon where you're like, I understand this is so beautiful, but so much of Oregon is a little fucked up. I spoke to a farmer. I was shooting this like docu-series thing. I spoke to a farmer. It's like part of the thing we were interviewing, and we were like, "Oh, we can't use any of this footage." Because this farmer, who's like a pretty big farmer out there, I remember we pulled up to the place with the crew, and there was a fucking peacock just on the roof of the house. And it was like the first thing that was like weird. He doesn't have peacock. It's not like part of his farm. He's mostly like fish farm. Is that like a tilapia farm?
Yeah.
Which, by the way, don't eat tilapia. I saw what the fucking, it was just like covered in algae and shit.
Yeah.
Like it was disgusting. And it was basically like a in-ground pool that he just had like 80, like maybe like 5, or no, I was going to say 80, but like hundreds of fish just bumping into each other. It's fucking disgusting. Anyway, so we're talking to the guy, and I'm like, he's talking about all the things he farms, and he's got this like special black pig that they get imported there, and it's like the meat's amazing, but he like has a certain method of like taking care of them when he feeds them and stuff. So we're like, okay. And then he goes, honestly, do you want to know my favorite part? Now, I had seen a table that had blood, like he had just butchered an animal, and he didn't fucking wash it off for the film crew. And I was like, all right. He goes, here's my favorite part of this. He goes, you guys want to watch me butcher a pig? And we were like, no, we don't actually at all. And he goes, no, it's really humane. He goes, you get down. He goes, you get down on one knee, and you just put your arm over the pig, because he just feels like you're cuddling them. They're pretty cuddly animals. And then he shows us this knife. It's like it almost looks like an envelope opener. Yeah, like a long thin knife, like something in like Game of Thrones where like you just like turn on the person. What is it? And he goes, you just stick him in the you just get him in the jugular, and then you just let them bleed out. And you hold them close to you, and you just let them go, and you feel them twitch. That's how you know, because it's painless for them. But he's getting he's like romanticizing it, And he's like, he's like, yeah, you get blood all over you. He's like, they're just bleeding out. And you just hold them while they die, and then you go cut them up, and you tell them. And it was just like this. He was so into this, and then he started going into these childhood stories about, like his dad, who was like basically like a fucking like a fugitive. Was like on the run. He was like a drug dealer. Yeah. And I mean, this guy's story was so, and this is, I'm not exaggerating. This is like one of like 10 people who were like this that had been in Oregon.
Right.
Like who were not just like, he also had fucking like just random women that were like in his house that he couldn't explain who they were. They weren't like they looked really dirty and shit. I swear. He also had like just girls at his house. And we were like, oh, is that your family? He's like, no. I was like, oh, all right. It's like they just looked like they were like captive, but I don't think they were. I don't think they were. Yeah, I don't think I left them.
Hard to tell, but yes.
Yeah, just really. And then I just kept on meeting people like that in Oregon.
Yeah.
And I was like, how is this like right Portland? We just had like, amazing sushi in Portland.
Right. Yeah, we're eating sashimi and
I've had some incredible food. I've been to Portland a few times.
Yeah.
I've had incredible food in Portland.
Great place.
Right. Just don't go right outside of it. I
haven't been. No, I don't know if I want to go outside or not. I kind of do, actually.
Yeah. That's one of those places though where you go and you're like, oh, all right, I could do without this.
Tune in next week for more travel stories in part 2 of Where in the World is Ming Chen? And here's a clip from Ming's first stand-up comedy set.
I was on a TV show called Comic Book Men. It used to air on AMC after The Walking Dead. We got a really, really cool time slot. Thank you very much. I got 7 seasons, 96 episodes, 96 fun-filled episodes. Unfortunately, we got canceled a few years ago, and I'm doing comedy underneath a liquor store in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Yeah, so I know you guys are in comedy. You guys want to hit it big, be like Chris Rock or like a big comedian. Save your money, guys. Save your money. I wish I did. I spent that shit like water, man. Yeah. My name is Ming. So I'm full-blooded Chinese. Mom and dad, full-blood Chinese. I love disappointing white people. I love it. The best way to disappoint white people is they're like, oh man, where are you from? Hong Kong, Taiwan? I'm like, no, Cleveland. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio. They're